Alright, welcome back to the SuperCoach Nuff channel. In today's video we're going to look at the NRL SuperCoach stock market going into round 12 of the 2023 season. And so as we go through this week, you'll notice there's a few extra colours on the screen. So I guess just to quickly explain, the players highlighted in green under their names refer to players that their teams are playing in round 13. I've included also some players in gold. Their teams are playing round 13 and 16. So that's Cowboys, the Sea Eagles, and the Knights. And obviously also the Eels, who do actually play all three bye rounds. And then some players highlighted in pink that do have the bye in round 13, but do cover 16 and 19. So players just to keep in the back of the mind, if we can hold them through round 13, they should provide us some good coverage for the other two buys. You will notice though as you go through that I have included players that will most likely be playing Origin. We'll obviously discuss them individually as we go through, but until we know for sure who's lined up in the teams, you can still potentially consider them as possibilities. So at the top of our list for this week for the hookers is Cody Nikorima. So coming off the bye, a couple of good scores before the bye for the Dolphins, playing in 5'8", so a bit of out of position pick. So a really good cash grab, obviously playing this week and then playing next week. And then, you could look to upgrade after round 14 perhaps. So Nikorima, if you're looking for a cheap option in the hooker position, I think he's the best bet, and about probably the only option left. You'll see that I haven't included a cheapie section in this. I think a couple of the cheap bench hookers like Sonny Luke, Brendan Hands, they're pretty irrelevant. They're just not scoring enough points. So I think it's a position where you've got to start looking at targeting two guns in the position. Excuse me. Jaden Sullivan, though, has proven to be a trap, and I guess this hasn't helped with Anthony Griffin's sacking. So named to start back on the bench this week. So if you did get on him, hoping for a bit of buy coverage and a bit of a pod cash grab, that move has not worked out. Jake Granville has now got DPP status, so he can play in the second row as well as hooker. But a real sort of slow burn option. The only reason we're holding is because of his buy coverage. Reed Marnie, 550k, decent sort of average, does play the other two buys. So if you've got money and you can afford to hold during this time, and keeping in mind you only need a best 13 every week. So if you're carrying, say, Marnie and Grant, and obviously can cover 13 across the other positions, then you really don't have anything to worry about. So a bit of a point of difference option there. Mitch Kenny, he's another one who's got dual position status because he's doing a lot of work in the middle. But as you can see, the numbers don't really stack up. Scored 25 last week, which means the 3-round average is 32, break even of 53. So, I'd even recommend sideways to Nikorima, or obviously if you can upgrade, that's probably the preferred move. Reece Robson, really good buy coverage. As you can see, we'll cover around 13 and 16. Part of the reason why I brought him into my team. I guess the one thing that might go against him is if they decide to shake up the hooker position in the New South Wales Origin team. At the moment, I guess a lot of the teams I've seen, like people predicting and picking their New South Wales team, it looks like they're going back to one hooker. With Matt Burton being that bench utility. Whether that holds any weight or not, we'll see. But if they are looking for a sort of 80-minute performance at hooker, they could go with Robson. Obviously, Cook and Api Coruscant are both capable too. So you'd think maybe they'll plump for the experience first in the first game, and if they need to adjust, they can. So for that reason, I still like Robson as a decent pot option. Jerry Marshall King, so he's coming off the bye. He plays around 13. So I think after Cook and Grant, he probably is firmly established as the third choice hooker. And you could even argue with his origin period availability that he could even be in the top two, depending how you look at things. So if you can get Marshall King in, he's obviously, I think, a great target. If you need to cut back, then Robson or Marnie are in that sort of category, depending on your structure across the team. Brandon Smith, I've included on this list just as a note that I think, if you haven't already done so, you've got to cut him. The origin coverage isn't great for the Roosters. And also, he was moved back to the bench. And the Roosters in general just seem to be struggling a bit. So I think it's time to cut your losses. If you can obviously upgrade, less than it's about 100k to Robson, for example. If you need to go down, you make 100k going to Nicarima, and you'll probably get back close to that mark in a couple of weeks anyway with the added points. So I think it's time to cut the cheese, pardon the pun, if you haven't got him. Damien Cook, I've got him as being available for round 13, but you'd assume he's in the origin setup somewhere. But then again, like I said, there's a few sort of options in the New South Wales squad, or potentially in the team. And yeah, I think South's good form and trying to keep club combinations would have Cook as the front runner. So I wouldn't bank on him being available for round 13, but South are, so he's got the green designation there. But he's a gun. You hang on to him. You don't worry about it too much. Same deal with Harry Grant. I've actually put the wrong colour on there. You can see the break even's about around his average. So yeah, he's a gun. Hold him. And Wade Egan. So similar to Smith, he's been coming off the bench. Freddie Lussick's been starting. And also with Egan, a lot of his early season scores were off the back of tries. So um, a bit of a bold call here because they are on the bye this week, but I've suggested to cut Egan. He is available next week, but I don't think he's worth keeping around. I'd downgrade to Nicarima or, upgrade. Sort of similar to what we've discussed already. Into the premium front row options. So it's got 600k plus here. I forgot to adjust it. It is 550k plus. A couple little errors in this presentation, just trying to get the stock market video out to everyone. So at the top of the list this week, Tohu Harris. So a couple of really good weeks bouncing back, which represents his his low break even of 19. Yeah, 600k. He's a pretty good buy for next week. Obviously, don't get this week because he won't actually play. Jack DeBellin, so he's continuing to punch out good scores. 84. I think there was maybe a little bit of attacking stats in amongst that, but he's going to continue to push up. So dual position as well. So a nice pot option. The Dragons do have relatively good buy coverage, playing 13 and 19. So if you can cover in 16, he could be a really good point of difference across the season. Ruben Cotter, so 54, back to his sort of pure base work, which is fine. Plays 13 and 16 unless picked for Queensland. So if he is playing, that will be really valuable as a point of difference. If he's picked for Queensland and not playing, well then obviously you can sideways perhaps. There might even be a potential downgrade option that you'd like to look at that we'll talk about a bit later. So Tino, he's a gun. He's going to be playing for Queensland, so the times aren't that strongly impacted by the Origin buy schedule. So if you've got him, you hold him during that time. I've included Taniela Paseka here for reasons I'm not 100% sure of myself, but I guess, a 3 round average of 61 with that good buy coverage around 13 and 16. So I think, if you're looking for a bit of prop cover during those first couple of buy rounds, I think he could do a decent enough job. Probably have others picked a bit higher over him, but again, just trying to throw something different out there for everyone. Fanua Blake's on the bye this week, but he just keeps punching out points. He keeps scoring tries, so you're not banking on that every week. But again, his base is good enough that if he isn't scoring tries, you're still really glad you got him. And he's probably too far out of reach for me now, given that he's 60k more expensive than even Payne Haas. Joe Tarpany, so got off the run of 60s and creeped up to a 70 this week. So he's a really good option during the Origin period, given he'll play 13 and 19. New Zealand representatives obviously won't have to worry about selection. Yeah, so, and I guess also particularly if the likes of Horsburgh, Hudson Young, these players that are sort of being talked about as bolters, get a run in the Origin team, then obviously they'll become more of a responsibility on Tarpany to carry the workload through the Origin period. Payne Haas, so Brisbane do play this week, but he is, I think, the first one picked in the front row for New South Wales. So he's a gun. You just hold him through the Origin break, because he punches out minutes and scores for fun, even if he's playing Origin and all that sort of stuff. Corey Horsburgh, so he's peaked in price. So I think you hold him if you've got him because you're hoping for round 13 coverage. But if he does get named on Sunday, or I think actually Queensland named their team Monday, he's an easy trade out. So, you just wait and see on that pick. Max King, so obviously not playing 13, but a good coverage afterwards. Um, he's dipping in price a bit there with a break even of 87. But my honest opinion, being obviously a Bulldogs fan and watching them fairly close, is he'll really benefit from the break. He's almost single handedly carried the forward pack and particularly in the middle of that forward pack for the season. So I think a break will be well forthcoming for Max King, and then he'll go again. Nelson Asafa Solomona, so scored 13 on the weekend. I didn't actually follow up with why that was the case, whether it was an injury or HIA or something. But I think if you've got him, you just wait and see. Or I guess if you haven't got him, you obviously wait. He's going to dip in price. The Storm's buy coverage isn't fantastic, but if you are desperate for a player in round 16, I think his price could be nice and juicy by then. Again, depending on if he's a long-term injury or whatnot. I'll be honest, I forgot to check that up. I did put that as the temporary thing, and then again in my rush to get this done, I did not follow through. And also, I did make an error with Tom Gilbert. He should probably slide up the list a bit further, given his break even of 41. But again, another one, wait and see if he gets picked for Origin and then make your decision there on what you do. So there you go. I actually got this one right. So budget front rows, I guess they're not all necessarily cheapies, but they are all under 500k. And at the top of the list is Harrison Edwards. So obviously that 94 is a hugely inflated score with a try and a line break. But even if you take that out, named to start at lock for the Bulldogs, and did a lot of work, defensively and in attack, running the ball. He's a bit like Jacob Kiraz last year. So essentially, now that we're past round 11 or past round 10, it actually starts round 11. Um, Clubs can start to play their players from outside the top 30, which Edwards currently is. He had played a couple of games earlier, but that was because of the dispensation given to the Dogs with all their injuries and whatnot. So Jacob Kiraz was in a similar boat last year. He did play round 10 because of dispensation, but then he didn't miss a game because he could be selected from outside the top 30. And I think that's what they're doing with Edwards. Obviously, the Bulldogs are still at the very back end of their salary cap issues. Um, so I think this has been a bit of a ploy to try and get around that. But now that he's eligible, I think Edwards will play even when Thompson and the other sort of front row, middle rotation guys come back into the team fully. He'll still have a spot in that rotation. Again, this is just my opinion. I don't know that for sure. So I think he's a really good option and one I'm seriously considering bringing into my side. Obviously, doesn't play round 13, but will continue to play after that, going into the other bye rounds. And if he keeps getting named to play at lock, he'll get dual position as well, which could create a nice swing for me in the back end of the season. Lindsay Smith, so nice slow burn option. This is the time of year we sort of, if you picked him up at his bottom price, this is what you were waiting for this time of year, where Penrith are going to have a few players at least out playing Origin, so maybe a few more minutes. Also, Spencer Lenu's injury has created a few more minutes. Admittedly, not a lot, but Smith could benefit from that also. James Fisher Harris. So speaking of Penrith, a nice 80 there on the weekend, which means he's bottomed out in price. So if you are looking for a bottom basement sort of prop keeper, you could go with Fisher Harris, again being a New Zealand representative. Doesn't have to worry about Origin, and obviously will play some big minutes to cover the likes of Yo. Probably Liam Martin could feature at some point. Those sort of players. Wiramu Greg, so obviously the primo buy coverage is the reason why we're interested in him. He's just ticking along with another 38. So, he's not going to make us a lot of money. He's just going to give us those few extra points that we may be able to use over the buy period. Hame Sele, so, he's continuing to tick along in cash gen. 49 on the weekend is a good return. Souths are going to be missing the likes of Murray, possibly Jai Arrow, playing Origin, so there could be a few more minutes there for him. Tom Ailey, so on the buy this week, and I guess out of these cheaper options, is probably the one that you would be most inclined to get off of, despite playing round 13. Perhaps what you could do is wait a week and then sort of move him to Edwards. I think you are going to have to pay a bit extra for that move, but obviously then the buy coverage and also the scoring potential is going to be a bit greater. So I don't hate that move. I think that could be a solid effort, a solid move as well if you do have Tom Haley. And TPJ, so another sort of cheap option that's bottomed out in price. Again, he's one that's around 14 target, given the buy coverage for the Bulldogs. Um, has the upside, which I guess is the sort of the key to that pick, but hasn't really shown it so far this season. Onto the second row premium options, so 600k and above. Scott Sorensen at the top of this list, so we have to put a bit of respect on this man after punching out a 175. So there might be the temptation to go a bit of a cash grab because you look at the numbers and you're like, that looks really tasty. But when you break it down, you take out that 175 from his average, he's actually only averaged 55 in every other game, which sort of, I guess, doesn't quite have him at a keeper level. And again, Penrith don't have the most um, advantageous buy coverage. Um, so I think if you're looking to grab some cash, there's better ways to go about it. If you had him, you cheer him with that 175, and you obviously hold to take that cash rise, and then when he peaks, you get off as soon as you can. Hudson Young, so it could be a really handy buy pod option. So I've tried to mash those two symbols together there. But there is some sort of people suggesting that he would be perfectly suited to the Origin arena. That little bit of angry pills that you need to have at that level. So yes, again, you just wait and see. I think he could be a really good buy during that time with the Raiders' schedule. But if he's playing for New South Wales, then it obviously doesn't really help us at all. Angus Crichton, so I was going to put that he's bottomed in price, but I think you got to pass just given the options around that price point. Um, yeah, and especially he's starting on the bench this week, so looks like he'll probably play a bit more middle rotation sort of role, or could replace Butcher on the edge and Butcher moves into the middle. So yeah, so just one to wait and see on until particularly the Roosters turn around their form. Isaiah Yo, so he's a gun. If you can afford to hold him, um, as I talked about in my buy planning video, I think you can afford to hold about 5 sort of guns through the Origin period that are going to play all 3 games. Obviously, that is. Um, yeah, if he's one of your 5, then you hold it. If not, you've got 6, 7, 8 potentially. You might have to move one on. Um, like I think I've got 4. I thought I had 5, but one of them is a bit iffy, which we'll talk about. So yeah, so I don't have Isaiah Yo, so that's not really my concern. Teague Wilton, so obviously has the good buy coverage after round 13, so it could be a really good option for that second half of the season. Um, you don't need to get on straight away. Obviously, the 47 has adjusted his break even slightly, but it's still not bad compared to his average and particularly his 3 rounder. Hopgood, so obviously got the dream Origin coverage. He's got the buy coverage for the Origin coverage. I think I said Origin average. I was going to talk about his awesome average. So I've given him back the gun symbol. He's deserved it. Playing lock forward there at the Eels. Dave Fafita, so another 100 plus score, 3 round average of 108. So I didn't think he deserved the gun symbol, to be fair. He's upgraded to the tank because that's what he is, an absolute tank. And even if he does play Origin, I think you hold the Titans didn't play 13 or 16 anyway. So you should sort of plan around holding him even if he is playing Origin. Nikora, so 84, which is a bit of a return to the form we've expected from him. As an owner, I'm watching him pretty closely as well, so he's a gun. If you can hold through round 13, I would recommend it. If you haven't got him, he's definitely a round 14 target. Olaquatu, so, the bit of chat about him being in the Origin team is dissipated. So this could turn him into a really good sort of Origin period point of difference. Again, we're just waiting on teams for that. Madison, so perfect buy coverage. From a lot of what I've seen, he's not in that 17, 18 man squad. So I think, we'll just wait next week to be sure. And if he's not named in the New South Wales team, he's the buy of the week next week. And Tyson Frizzell, so, if you're looking for a bit of buy coverage with a bit more of a solid base, I think Tyson at a cheaper price also. I think Tyson Frizzell's not the worst option. So into the mid-range options, so between 450, 600k, we're looking at here. And I guess another big scorer from last week, Hylam Lukey at the top. And, the difference with Lukey is obviously the better Origin by coverage. But I think he's still a trap. Again, he needs a lot of attacking stats to get to 121. You take that out of his average, you take, his attacking stats away from his score, and the base isn't really there. He also doesn't play 80 minutes, which, he's really reliant on attacking stats. So I don't think you go there, even as a cash grab. You can see he's still got a positive break even. I've just realised I've done the colours the wrong way on this one too. I've had a shocker here, lads. Apologies for that. Eli Katoa, so he's bottomed out in price. after his injury a couple of weeks ago. So, if you are looking for a cheap option with a lot of upside, um, you might want to wait till after round 13. And it's definitely a play I would consider at that time. Jacob Preston, so, he just keeps ticking along. Obviously, if you wanted to swap him for a round 13 play, you could. But if you can afford to, like we're saying with a few of these other round 14 options, if you can afford to hold him, you'll definitely be rewarded in the back half of the Origin period. So the Cardi Party looks like it's back on with Sean Lane unfortunately getting injured for a long term. Cartwright's named to start on the edge for Parramatta. Awesome buy coverage. So, if you're looking for a cheap cover, I think he is the number one selection in that sort of price range. Jackson Ford, so on the bye this week, obviously didn't play last week with concussion. So, you could hold him for one more week, play him round 13, and then he could become a Jacob Preston if you haven't got him already. If you can upgrade, maybe a Nikora or Teague Wilton would be ideal. Yeah, so if you wanted to trade out this week because you need a player for this week as well as next week and that sort of thing, you could go to a Bryce Cartwright or maybe that's about all I'd look at in this range. Just in terms of someone that will also play around 13. Pat Carrigan and Cam Murray will lump them in together because I think it's fair to assume they're both playing Origin. So I guess Carrigan, you're carrying him as a point of difference. I think with Cam Murray, you wait. So if you traded him out, you just wait till after Origin now to get him back in, even though his price has probably bottomed out. If you've got him, you could hold him. But a bit like Yo, if he's your sixth, seventh Origin player that you're holding, you might want to trade him out. You won't get a lot of value out of it, which is why you may also wish to hold him over some of the other players. Josh King, Nat Butcher, again, we can probably lump these guys together. They're, very much workhorse types, get through a mountain of work. They're sort of sub premium in price. Also, I guess sub premium in terms of their averages. So if you wanted to play them, you could, but they don't have the best buy coverage, don't have the best upside potentially, those sort of things. Zach Hosking, so I think you do have to cut Hosking. Obviously, doesn't have great buy coverage. Um, the break even's now quite high, so he will leak cash. And also, Liam Martin's back in the picture now, so surely it's only a matter of time before he comes back on an edge. I think the one thing that might save Hosking is the fact that he can play either edge. But Sorensen just getting a 175 and scoring tries and there was a lot of work rate in that too. So if he's getting all the work and Hosking isn't, who's going to get chopped? I guess sorry. That's what I was going to say. The one thing that might save him is the fact that he is more of an edge player. Sorensen can play through the middle, so they may wish to sort of revert to that sort of setup. Lockie Fitzgibbon is had a poor performance on the weekend. Not sure if there was injury involved or that sort of thing. Again, another one I was supposed to follow up with and just forgot. There's a bit going on in the world of the nuff. But yeah, wait and like you hold you bought him in for this buy coverage, so I think you just hang on. But Sean Lane, you do have to cut. Obviously, injured out for about 6 weeks, which is essentially all the period you actually wanted to hold him for. So it's a shame, but you downgrade to Cardi for 100 grand, and you're doing all right, I think. So into the cheapy options, and as you can see, there's a few nice little options in terms of the Origin coverage as well. So Jack Kajeski, nice score on the weekend with the 72. So he's still got a negative break even. and plays 13-16, so really great cash cow if you got on. Ben Travojevic, so really cheap price, um, negative break even, but I guess the big thing for him is that Tuolangi is expected to be out for about 6 weeks, which sort of coincides with the origin coverage of Manly playing 13 and 16. Ben Travojevic named in that second row position, so hopefully gets 80 minutes, maybe 60 minutes is more realistic. But, in that time, he can definitely punch out some points. Given the pedigree of the family, he does have the ability for a bit of upside, perhaps, if he does get the time. Um, and also, at such a cheap price, you're only going to make money out of the deal. So that's why I've put the best buy on him in this sort of category. I don't think he's the best buy of the week. We'll talk about another option a bit later. And I'll probably also have Edwards above him, despite being slightly higher priced and slightly um, worse buy coverage. But if you're looking for a bit of a sneaky pod, I'd recommend him. I'm going to wait a week, and I think him and Madison are my two targets in round 13. Tyrone Peachy, so 77, now has the dual position status, so I could have actually put him in the centre wing conversation, but given the lack of cheapies in the second row, that's why him and Ben Travojevic have both ended up in this discussion. If you've got him, keep holding. As long as you can, he'll make some more money. And then maybe after round 16, it will be the right time to flip him. And Josh Schuster's named to play at 5'8" for Manly. So, his break even isn't too flash this week, but, he only needs one spike game and he'll sort of take off in price rises again. So onto the halfbacks. Try to change up some of the symbols this week just so it's not, same old, same old. So SJ on the bye this week, but I think if you've got him, you hold. You've got him to play round 13, and then you can obviously reassess after. Mitchell Moses, so back from the head knock this week. So again, you bought him for a buy coverage. Could be a nice point of difference. I could have also had the roller coaster symbol on there. We know he's got the ability to go big or go missing. Nathan Cleary, so had that poor performance a couple of weeks ago during Magic Round. He's bottomed out in price. So yeah, if you're gonna get on Cleary, you're waiting for him to dip in price. You can get on, but obviously won't play any games through Origin or the buy rounds, I suppose. Jerome Hughes is another potential pod that's bottomed out in price. Um, but again, Melbourne's buy coverage isn't fantastic. DCE, despite the yellow status there, won't be available. He'll be playing for Queensland, so chop him now if you've got him. Adam Reynolds, so unfortunately got a head knock, um, and means he's missing this week. Is playing round 13, so if you do have him, despite me suggesting he's been a trap, um, I think you hold, and then obviously round 14 you flip him. Nico Hines, so obviously his massive start to the season's catching up with him there with the break even of 149. Just wait on him. Obviously, or I say obviously, not 100% certain, but he has to feature somewhere in the New South Wales team, surely. So he probably won't have that nice buy availability that I've actually suggested there. So into the 5'8" position, and so Jerome Luai is at the top of this list, another massive score from the weekend. Was very close to actually putting the trap symbol on him too, but I think out of all of those guys that have this spike score and this massive negative break even, he is the one that's most likely to actually make a lot of cash out of it. Doesn't cover round 13, which obviously isn't ideal, but I guess also when you consider the the fact that like Cleary will be missing, um, a couple other players around him. I was like, yo, I was just trying to think of a couple more that would be playing. He could sort of take a bigger role in the team through that time, and obviously that would translate to potentially higher scores. But yeah, I think out of all those sort of cash grabby options, he's the best of what's not really that good of an idea. Kalen Ponga. So I think this is a wait and see. You'd assume he'd be in the Origin team somewhere, but the fact that he's not playing fullback for his club and also the form of Reece Walsh might mean that he's not playing at fullback. And, the centre position's pretty stacked with Holmes, Gagai, the Hammer could play there. Um, so he might even be fourth on that list. And then the wingers, you've got Cobbo, Coates. I'm missing someone off the top of my head. Yeah, there's definitely a few that are in that. Oh, Corey Oates, that's the one I was trying to think of. So, it could be a thing where and I guess on the bench, they pretty much are stuck with, or are going to stick with Hunt and Grant off the bench unless they decide to only play two forwards, which I think it's a bit of a bold move in the Origin arena. Um, Ponga could be the odd man out. So I think we just wait and see. Obviously, you could take the punt this week and take the extra bit of cash that he'll make. But if he's not named in the Origin team, then he could definitely become a cheeky pot option for the second 5'8" spot in your team. Isaiah Katoa, so the slow burn continues. Um, yeah, I think more and more I'm looking towards keeping him for round 13, and then he's going to be a trade out in round 14. And that's going to be facilitated by one of the players a bit further down the list. Matt Burton, so he's looking really good now. He's got the dual position, halfback and 5'8". So definitely coming into pod calculations again. Phoenix Crossland, he's just continuing that slow burn. Has good buy coverage, so if you've got him, I think you just wait it out. Oluwapu, so named to start for the first time this weekend. So I've got the weight symbol on him now. I don't think you have to get him in this week, even if he does play quite well and scores well. His price isn't going to get completely out of hand. And then, he could be the perfect downgrade in round 14 for Katoa. And then obviously you can use that money elsewhere if that's what you need to do. I just realised I haven't coloured in some of these players. Joey Manu. So, quite a good break even still, but is going to be out injured this week. So I can understand people wanting to trade him, given that he's not playing this week, he's not playing next week. But I guess what my plan is at the moment is to actually use him in round 14 to trade out Katoa. He's going to slide into my 5'8" slot, and I'm going to sort of bring Kiraz into his spot. So, I'm basically upgrading Katoa to a keeper for very little money. The other option, in saying that, the other option is if I do want to bring Oluwapu in, I can downgrade and then, there's other options I can trade out in my centre wing to get Kiraz in. So, but at the moment, that's doing it in one trade, making it nice and clean and, just having an extra gun in my side. So Tom Dearden, I've put him back on the list this week as, I guess, another buy pot option. Unless Munster's injured, I don't think he's any chance of a crack in the Origin team. So, I think he'll be a pretty good option if you do want someone just to play through the buys. And you obviously don't have the money to upgrade to Dylan Brown. So, a bit of a flat week for Dylan Brown, but, he's a gun. He's got supreme buy coverage, so get on. Munster, so he's playing Origin, so if you've got him, you hold. I guess he's one where if you've got a couple too many Origin players, you could easily sideways him to Brown or Walker, and I guess if anything, gain some extra points through the Origin break, and then get Munster back in at the back end of the season. Cody Walker, so maybe an outside chance of an Origin spot. Although, once you start to factor in the likes of Hines and Burton and who's the other one I was just trying to think of? I cannot remember. Save myself. There's probably just not quite a spot for Cody Walker, even though he's in really great form and has done it before. So, really good option for round 13 and also round 19. So, if you're running Brown and Cody Walker in your 2-5-8 positions, you're pretty well set through the Origin period, I think anyway. And Jack White, so he's peaked in price, that little cash grab a couple of weeks ago. The cash has run out, so you can hold till after round 13, or you can sideways upgrade, whatever you want to do. Onto the premium centre wing options. So at the top of the list again, Connolly Lemuelu. So dual position, plays round 13, plays second row, which means a solid floor, negative break even. If you haven't got him in, I think you've got to find a way. It's just too good of a deal not to. Mike Acevo, so I guess a bit of a pod option, because of his bike coverage and his ability to find the try line. Sort of like a bigger, badder looking version of Alex Johnston in that sense. So yeah, I guess if I was trying to pick between those two, I'd probably go Sebo, even though he is higher priced. He's higher priced for a reason. Matt Timoko, so just continues to look good. Made one really good run I saw in the Raiders game on the weekend. Busted a few tackles and all that sort of deal. So yeah, really handy pot option. Probably a bit too expensive for me now, given he's over 700k. But yeah, if you've got him, you're absolutely cheering. Brian Tyre, so 54 points. That's his floor. Probably will play for New South Wales, but didn't have good Origin coverage anyway, so that's fine. Val Holmes and Dan Gagai, so both guns, both more than likely going to play for Queensland, so that bike coverage isn't fantastic. But again, I guess any of these centre wings that are playing Origin, they're probably the ones that you sort of trade out first, because as you can see, there's so many great options at the position. Jermaine Sarko, so he keeps scoring all right. We'll play around 13. Same with Marzu, he plays round 16 as well. So obviously Marzu would be the preference there. Ewan Aitken, so sort of another dual position player. Although you would think being out in the centres as opposed to Lemuelu being in the second row would mean that those prices are flipped, but Aitken's doing the business. Lachlan Miller, so goal kicking fullbacks, they're always pretty well gold in our centre wing spot. Add in the bye coverage, and yeah, I think I said Lemuelu was the number one target. I lied, it's probably Lachlan Miller. Actually, I lied. There's someone in the mid-price range that's the number one target because of the price. So Ronaldo Mulatalo, I think if you've got him and you can afford to hold, you do, because he offers that awesome coverage in round 14 onwards. Campbell Graham, so this is again dependent on the Origin selection, but it looks more and more likely that he's in. So I think at his price, his break even, I'd be getting out of the pick, but I can understand why people would hold. Nick Meaney, so a bit of a poor performance from him on the weekend, which means he's got a massive break even, but again, goal kicking fullback, we can't argue with that. So on to mid-range options, and so the number one trade target that I just referred to is Ruben Garrick. So 576k, he's had 2 really good weeks, which means he's got a ridiculously low break even, kicks goals. If Tom Trbojevic does find a way into the New South Wales Origin team. He could play a bit of fullback, although they have tended to go with KO Weeks over the last couple of times Turbo's been out. Um, yeah, so if you haven't got him, get him in. Taruva and Warbrick, again, their price or cash generation has regenerated a bit. Got a bit of a phone call here. I probably know what that's about. I should get to that. So we'll punch through this super quick. So Taruva and Warbrick, I think even though they're still going to make a bit of cash, you can chop them for the cheap option that's available. You go one up, one down with Billy Smith and Ruben Garrick. That's two perfect trades. Jared Croker, so I think you just hold till after round 13, and then his job as a cash cow is done. Cheekham, dual position option. That's about the only thing to say about that. Hayes Perham, a bit of a pod option for post round 13, but there's better options. Alex Johnston, so I'll put the trap symbol on him. I've spoken about him before. He does rely on tries. South don't hit the left-hand side of attack as much as they used to. Probably just one to avoid, despite the good buy coverage. Jacob Kiraz, so he is my number one target for post round 14, or post round 13, I should say. So you just wait this week, buy next week, get him in at about 480 to at worst 520, and then you just cheer him on from there. The Hammer, depending on whether he plays Origin or not. Jack Bird, so DPP option, but who knows what's going on at the Dragons. So, I'd rather Lemuelu at the same price. CNK, so the amount of work he did against the Dogs, I don't know how he only scored 43. So he's on the bye this week, and then after round 13 you can reassess. Penasini, is that buy coverage option. So on the cheaper options in the centre wing, and the best buy this week, number one, with a bullet, Billy Smith. So I did just say his name before, but I think you get him above Harry Edwards, you get him above Ben Trbojevic. Despite the poor buy coverage, he's just going to make so much cash. So get him in this week. You can trade him for Max Fiernay, who I've got him as buy coverage, but he is a trap. It looks like the new coach has gone back to Zach Lomax, so I don't think we'll see Max Fiernay for a while. And Paul Alamotti, you can wait on him as a coverage post round 13. You could trade him as well to Billy Smith. Obviously, you don't make a lot of money out of that trade, but Billy Smith will probably cost the same amount next week. And so into the fullback position, Dream Buller is at the top of the list again. He's just churning out, making some cash for us. And could be really good coverage after round 13. Reece Walsh, so could play round 13 if he's not playing for Queensland, but I think he's playing for Queensland. That's why I'm suggesting we wait. So Tommy Turbo, I've got him as a bit of a bipod because the rumours are that he's not going to be picked for Origin. And so if you've got a player of his calibre playing 13 and 16, he's almost a must-have during the front end of the Origin buy period as far as I'm concerned. I'm glad I've held on to him. It sort of worked out for me that way. Dylan Edwards, so I think you just wait. Outside chance of getting a backline spot in the Origin team. Obviously stuck behind Teddy at fullback, but could potentially find his way onto a wing. So I think you wait. If he's not picked, he's not playing round 13, so you don't buy then. But round 14, you could try to get him in, grab all those points during the middle of the Origin buy period. Scotty Drinkwater, a bit of another buy pod option. But I think if Turbo's available, you get Turbo over Drinkwater every day of the week and twice on Sunday. Teddy, I think we're just going to have to pass on him for now. Just him and the Roosters don't look like their former selves. So he'll dip in price further, and obviously he'll play Origin, being the New South Wales captain. So we'll just wait post-Origin and see how we sit. Will Kennedy, another one in the sort of post round 13 category. Gutho, if you're willing to ride the roller coaster there, great bye coverage, and the trail is a gun. Will be playing for New South Wales, so have a plan to work around him during the Origin period. But yeah, so we'll wrap the video up there because I do have to go. Got a couple of phone calls to field and that sort of thing. If you have any other thoughts or comments, feel free to comment in the space below the video. Also, if you are enjoying the stock market stuff, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and other than that, I'll catch you tomorrow for the round 12 preview.